Once you get a few sounds you like loaded into the drum rack, you'll be ready to start sculpting them into something usable. You can see here that I've already loaded up some sounds and have created a MIDI clip. I'm going to play this for you so you can hear what it sounds like, and then we're going to go through and we're going to sculpt the sounds into something much better than where it's at right now. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to start putting filters on some of these. Let's start with snare 1. All right, let me play this for you. So I like the top end of that, but I'm not going to use the middle of it. So let me show you how to put a high-pass filter on this. You double-click, and this little button here, filter, turn that on. We'll switch that from low-pass to high-pass filter. And I'm going to start sweeping through the frequencies so you can hear what it sounds like. So let's play this with that setting. So what that does is essentially just gives a little more top end to that snare, the main snare, number 2, which I'm actually going to get to next. So snare number 2, which is our main snare, definitely full-bodied, but it's missing just a little bit of snap that I like. So let me play that by itself, and you can hear what that sounds like. What I'm going to do next is add a plugin to this cell. The great thing about Ableton Live's drum rack is that you can put effects on each sound, which essentially sculpts each cell by itself without affecting any of the other cells. So let me show you what this sounds like with a transient designer. I'm going to go here to the VST folder, and I'm going to drag transient designer in. And by the way, Plugin Alliance has a 14-day trial of SBL Transient Designer if you're interested in trying this out. So definitely check that out. Let's play this sample. There's obviously the attack's at 0, sustain's at 0. There's nothing happening right now in this plugin. I'm going to play this without any settings. Now I'm going to start turning the attack up so that you can hear what it sounds like. Hear how it gives a little bit of snap to the beginning of that? That's kind of what you're going for when you have real heavy drums and a lot of compression, because a lot of times when you start compressing groups of drums, it starts to take the dynamics out of it. And what the transient designer does is it helps those sounds to pop through your mix. So transient designer is great and pretty much essential for that, and especially for dance music or anything that has a lot of power. So let me turn the output down just a little bit. Now, another thing that I want to do with this sound is there's a little bit of reverb in the sample. And a lot of times when you've got a full frequency mix happening, sometimes reverbs can muddy it up a little bit. So I'm going to mono this snare just a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with the Transient Designer, and I'm going to add a plugin called Utility that comes with Ableton. And I'm going to drag this in right after the Transient Designer. And I want you to notice that blue line right here. If I drop that in with the blue line there, it's putting that effect on the group of sounds on the entire drum rack. If I go to the left, right there, it's putting that sound after the Transient Designer within that cell. So it's important to remember that there is a difference of where you place this. So there we go. Now it's in the chain on snare number 2. All right, so let me show you what happens when I start monoing this. The way to do that is with the width parameter. All right, this is at 100% right now, and as I start to bring this to 0, you're going to hear it center itself in your mix. All right, I'm going to put that to 0 because I like my kicks and my snares right in the middle so that it has a little bit better stereo imaging in my mix. If you want to add reverb to it later, you can do that, but it's better to start with a clean sample in the middle. So next we're going to modify snare number 3. Let me play this for you by itself. The first thing I'm going to do is turn this down just a little bit because it's a little overpowering. Let's turn that down to about 34. And I'm also going to tune this down just a little bit. Let's hear what this all sounds like in the mix. All right, so let's modify snare number 5. Let's start by putting a bandpass filter on this. So a bandpass filter allows a specific frequency to pass through, whereas a low-pass filter only allows the low frequencies and a high-pass filter only allows the high frequencies. Bandpass filters are super cool. I use these all the time. Right about there. Let's tune this down a little bit as well. Another thing I want to do is I want to spread this out in the stereo spectrum. And something I like to do, it's a very cool trick. You can use this with the delay plugin. Let me just show you. Let's drag simple delay onto snare number 5. The first thing you're going to want to do is turn the sync buttons off, and then turn these both to 0. All right, let's play that. Now you'll notice what happens when I start turning this up slowly. And I'm going to turn the dry-wet ratio up. So now you've gone from a sample that was totally in the middle to something that comes out of the left and right speakers a little bit more drastically. And something else you might notice is that it's a little bit stronger in the left side. So I'm just going to set this here in the pan parameter to a little bit to the right so that it evens it out. All right, let's check it out. I'm going to turn this snare number 5 down just a little bit. It's a little overpowering. It's always a good thing to listen to your mix and adjust things accordingly as you go. Sometimes when you listen to sounds by themselves, they sound okay, but in relation to the other sounds, you'll notice that they're not quite right. So I've noticed that snare number 5 here is panned just a little bit too much to the right, so I'm going to play this and make the adjustment. That's better. So the next thing I'd like to do is get the group of sounds under control. I'm going to use the glue compressor again. I really, really like that compressor. I think this is a new feature in Ableton 9. And I'm going to drag it after the group of sounds. Got to make sure, again, this blue line is a great indicator as to where you're putting the plugins. If you put it to the left, it's going to be a part of this group. If you put it to the right, it's going to come after the entire chain. So the first thing we're going to do is set our threshold. Let's play it and adjust it as we go. The first thing you'll notice that happens is you start to hear that pop of that snare a little bit better. It's the great thing about using a transient designer and a compressor afterwards is you start to get your drums to snap a little bit harder. So this is good for now, but we'll definitely want to make more adjustments to our compression and EQ as we add more sounds later on.